Starting off this countdown, we have the USS Cyclops. On February 16th, 1918, the US Cyclops set out to Baltimore, Maryland from Rio. It was estimated to arrive on March 13th, but it never made it there. The ship and all the 306 members on board disappeared without a trace. The ship was never found, nor were any of the bodies. Now, there's a lot of things here that don't make sense. For example, how could the biggest ship in the US Navy disappear without a trace? Number two, if they were in trouble, why didn't they send an SOS signal? And why were there no pieces of wreckage found? As described by the Santa Fe magazine, they said, and I quote, "Usually a wooden bucket or a cork life preserver identified as belonging to a lost ship is picked up after a wreck, but not so with the Cyclops. There was just nothing left behind." It was a very weird and eerie case. Moving on at number 9, we have the Flannan Isle Lighthouse Keepers. On December 7th, 1900, 3 lighthouse keepers took their spot in Flannan Isle to do a 2-week shift. However, when the boat returned to collect them after their shift, they were nowhere to be found. They disappeared under very weird circumstances. For example, when they got to the lighthouse, it was locked. Inside, the clock had randomly stopped working. All their gear was left inside, and there was a meal on the table ready to be eaten. However, their bodies were never found. One other eerie thing would be the lighthouse keeper's journal entries. In one entry, he wrote about how one keeper was acting weird and all quiet. The other keeper was apparently crying for some reason. Now, some believe that the men were outside trying to secure something and then they got blown over the cliff, or a wave maybe washed them out to sea. Maybe they ran out in a panic and that's why they left their gear inside. Whereas others believe the men were killed and tossed out to sea, or even kidnapped by aliens. But whatever truly happened to them is still unknown. In our 8th spot, we have the Isdal woman. In 1970, a mysterious woman was found burned to death in Ice Valley, Norway. We don't know who she is, and it seems like someone didn't want us to find out. Why? Well, all the labels were cut off of her clothes, and distinctive marks were scraped off of her belongings. It gets weirder when police found that she had a number of fake passports and disguises like wigs. She also had notebook entries that were all in code, so it may be that she was some sort of foreign spy. But to this day, police haven't cracked this case. There have been some breakthroughs over the years, but nothing solid to help us identify this woman. We don't know what happened to her, what she was doing, and who her killer is. In our 7th spot, we have the Watcher. In 2014, a family bought a $1.3 million home in New Jersey. Little did they know that the home came with a lot of baggage, including a creepy stalker who called themselves the Watcher. Before even moving in, they began to receive letters from the Watcher. These letters talked about what the family was doing, proving to them that someone was truly watching them and stalking their every move. Some things that this Watcher said in the letters were, and I quote, "This home has been the subject of my family for decades. I have been put in charge of watching and waiting for its second coming." And then another letter referred to the new owner's children and asked, have they found out what's in the walls yet? Which made the family terrified, thinking that there was some listening device or, security cameras hidden in the walls. The family ended up hiring investigators and set up cameras, but the Watcher was never caught. As a result, they decided to move out of their home and sell it for a loss. But what about the new buyers? Like, do you have to put in house comes with creepy stalker in the house listing or what? I'm thinking that this was just some ploy for a guy to get $1 million home for cheap. Like he torments everyone who lives there so no one wants to buy the house, and then someone sells it for cheap and he gets it for a steal. Did I just solve this case? I think I did. Coming in at number 6, we have Septic Tank Sam. Septic Tank Sam is the name given to an unidentified man found in a septic tank in Alberta, Canada. So the year was 1977, and a couple went out to an abandoned farmhouse to find a pump for their septic tank. However, when they opened the tank, they found a decomposed body of a man. According to police, it was a very gruesome and sadistic crime scene. The man had been tied, tortured, burned, and shot before being dumped in the tank. The remains were in such bad condition that the examiner took months to figure out if the body belonged to a man or a woman. Eventually, it was discovered to be of a man. His teeth records were then sent to over 800 100 dentists, but there were no matches whatsoever. It's a very sad case, and I hope one day we can figure out who this man is and who his killer was. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the man from Torrid. This case is fairly creepy and might prove that time travel or multiple dimensions are real. So in July of 1954, a well-dressed man arrived at the Haneda Airport in Tokyo, Japan. Nothing was odd about this man until he was questioned by the customs officer. The man then claimed that he was from Torrid, and it was his 3rd time visiting Japan from his country. However, there is no country named Torrid. His documents, like his passport and IDs, were all authentic, but it said that he was from this mysterious place called Torrid. They eventually took him into custody for further interrogation, thinking that he was lying and he's some criminal. He was then placed in a hotel room that had only one entry and one exit point. That was monitored by 2 guards. But somehow, this man mysteriously vanished. The thing was, he was put up in a room high up in a hotel with no balcony. There's no way he could have escaped. Now, some people think that Torrid is a real country, but just in a different universe, and that this man somehow passed through a parallel dimension and ended up at the airport, the wrong airport. Whereas others believe that he is a time traveler who mistakenly landed at the airport. In our 4th spot, we have the UFOologist. Who here believes in aliens? If you do, hit that like button. Well, Max Spears certainly did. Max Spears was a ufologist as well as a conspiracy theorist. In July of 2016, he went to Poland to attend a conference to speak about secret military programs. On July 16th, he was at a friend's place when he passed out on her couch and stopped breathing. Here's the scary part. Just days before his death, Max told his mom, and I quote, "If anything happens to me, investigate." He also told her that he felt like he was going to get murdered. But the police officer that investigated the scene said he died of natural causes, and no examination or further investigation was conducted. Apparently, he overdosed on anti-anxiety drugs. But many people believe that there's more to this story than just that, especially since he dies only a couple of days after he said he was going to get murdered. Also, he was closing in on details about UFOs. Did someone kill him over this? It's all pretty freaky, am I right? Coming in at number 3, we have the double identity. So once upon a time, there was a man named Lawrence, or Larry Batter. He was a cookware salesman from Ohio. But on March 15th, 1957, he went out for a fishing trip and never returned home. It was deemed that he got lost at sea. He was declared dead in 1960. Here's the thing though, after Larry's disappearance, a man named John Fritz appeared in Nebraska. He became a radio station announcer and soon a local TV personality. John Fritz looked exactly like Larry Batter. In 1965, someone from Ohio recognized John as Larry, but John had no idea who Larry was and no memory of his life. Psychiatrists even examined him and deemed that he was not lying. But after running tests, his fingerprints were the same as Larry's. So John was Larry. I know, it's confusing. So here's a couple of theories. A, he faked his own death and started a new life in Nebraska. Number 2, he suffered from dissociative amnesia and genuinely forgot who he was. Sadly, he passed away in 1966 and his case was never solved. Or maybe Larry had a twin brother. Ever think of that? Come on, guys. In our 2nd spot, we have the Oakville rain blobs. In August of 1994, something weird fell from the skies in Oakville, Washington. At first, people thought it was just rain, but no, it was definitely not water. It was like these strange, clear blobs. One person reported that it was very mushy, almost like jello. This mysterious substance rained down 6 times over a 3-week period. And guess what? Anyone exposed to that substance became very ill. One resident had difficulty breathing, blurred vision, intense nausea, and vertigo. Another resident said that everyone in town contracted a flu-like illness that lasted 2 to 3 months. And sadly, several cats and dogs exposed to the substance became ill and passed away. Upon inspecting the substance, it apparently contained human white blood cells. But to this day, no one knows what it is or what caused it. And in our number 1 spot, we have the toxic lady. This next story is going to shock you. It's probably the craziest one on this list. So on February 19th, 1994, at 8:15 at night, a woman named Gloria Ramirez was wheeled into the emergency room in a hospital in the Southern California city of Riverside. She was only 31 years old, but her blood pressure was very low. She could barely breathe and her heart was beating very very fast. Medical staff started helping her right away. Things got weird. For starters, her body was covered in a weird oily sheen, and her breath had a fruity, garlicky scent to it. The blood then took some of her blood and realized weird particles floating in her blood. The weirdest part, after taking her blood, they noticed a weird smell emitting from the blood and her body. After getting a whiff of her blood, hospital staff became very ill and started dropping. In the end, 23 of the 37 emergency room staff became sick from Gloria. 5 had to be hospitalized for the rest of the night. 1 was severely ill and spent 2 weeks in the ICU. Hence why they gave her the name the Toxic Lady. Sadly, they weren't able to save Gloria's life. Now, what was wrong with Gloria, and how come she made so many people sick with her blood? Well, there are a couple of theories out there. One is that Gloria used something called DMSO to help her cervical cancer. DMSO is toxic, but back in the day, it was marketed as a cure-all, like it will cure your pain, anxiety, you name it. Now, when the MDSO is exposed to oxygen, it converts to dimethyl sulfate. As a gas, dimethyl sulfate vapors destroy cells in people's eyes, lungs, and mouth. When it gets in the body, it can cause convulsions, delirium, you name it. Although Gloria's family denies that she used DMSO, this is one explanation to why others got sick when exposed to her.
Coming in at number 10, we have what is dark matter? There are several mysteries that the universe has brought us, like how did the universe start? What is at the center of the universe? And how is every dog a good boy? Another one on that list is what on earth is dark matter? Here's the thing, we can't even see dark matter. We just kind of know it's there. How does that work? Well, we see it interact with other things even though we can't see it. Now, how does that work? Well, I have no idea, and we're getting a little too deep into the science for me. But what I do know is that dark matter is supposed to make up more than 85% of all matter in the universe. Well, since there's so much of this stuff floating around in the universe, why is it so hard to find? This is like trying to find a good movie in the DC entertainment universe. Well, Shazam was pretty good. But back to my point. The reason that dark matter is hard to detect is because it doesn't interact with the electromagnetic field, or at least that's what people assume. Coming in at number 9, we have Kryptos. So I will admit there is one person who can solve this mystery, but if they did, it would kinda take the fun out of it. Kryptos is one of the most famous codes in the world. It's a massive art piece that was created back in 1988 by artist Jim Sanborn. It looks like a giant scroll, and on it are 4 sections that have massive cryptograph puzzles on them. 3 out of the 4 riddles have been solved, but the 4th has yet to be cracked. There have been a few hints given by Jim himself. He said that the answer from the other 3 passages have clues as to what the answer is for the 4th. Also, he has revealed some of the words as Berlin, clock, and northeast, and still, people haven't been able to get to the bottom of what this thing means. I mean, come on guys, the dude's giving you full words. I'm sure he'll lay it all out before he dies or has the answer written down somewhere in case he passes in an accident, but unless he tells the world or some genius is able to break it down, we may never know what it means. Coming in at number 8, we have Who is Anonymous? A group of global hackers who unveil some of the dirty secrets that are going on behind the scenes. Who are they? Well, we will probably never know. For those of you who don't know, Anonymous popped up back in 2003, and at first it was mostly just them trolling the Church of Scientology. But since then, Anonymous has become one of the most powerful social movements. Whenever there's a serious political event, you can bet that Anonymous will show up to leak some pretty serious information. They have been widespread supporters of WikiLeaks, and most recently, they were seen during the George Floyd protests. It's hard to tell which claims of Anonymous are real, since anyone with a V for Vendetta mask could claim to be them, but I wouldn't want to be on their bad side because it would seem there is no database that they can't get it into. They have leaked information connected to the police, military services, and even the former President Donald Trump. Coming in at number 7, we have Deciphering the Voynich Manuscripts. If you haven't heard of the Voynich Manuscripts, well, let me take you down a creepy rabbit hole that will leave you scratching your head and probably a little afraid to fall asleep. The exact date that the manuscript was written is unknown, but it's thought that it would have been created somewhere somewhere in the 15th century based on the type of paper it was written on. The origin is also unknown because it was written in a language that has never been seen before, but it's thought that this thing could have come from Italy. But the language or code that is used as text in this manuscript has never been deciphered, even though historians have been trying to figure out what's going on with this book since the 90s. There are illustrations of flora in the book, so it's thought that it could be some record of alchemy or potions. And of course, because it's written in an unknown language, people think it could be the work of the devil. In the end, the whole thing could just be a joke or a bunch of gibberish that some madman wrote down in his spare time. People could be working tirelessly to crack a code that means nothing, or it could be the greatest work of dark magic on the planet. I wouldn't worry about it though, because we're probably going to be long gone before someone ever figures this out. Coming in at number 6, we have the steppe geoglyphs. History has left us with so many mysteries that it's hard to keep up with them all. Whether we're talking pyramids, Mayan temples, or is Atlantis a real place? All of these things have us questioning reality. Well, throw the steppe geoglyphs on the list because they are a head scratcher. They were discovered back in 2007 by researchers who were trying to find some sort of ancient pyramid system in Kazakhstan, and what they found was just as bizarre. Markings left on the earth that span for hundreds of miles and come in all sorts of strange shapes. Some of them are large arcing lines and others look kind of like symbols that we would recognize today. The oldest of them was over 8,000 years old. The answer as to why they are there or which group of people made them is still a mystery. It's thought that some of the markings could have been left to track the sun and the stars, as many other civilizations have done similar things, but there still isn't enough information to confirm that, so we're going to jump straight to the most logical answer, which is aliens did it. That's the one that everyone likes to use to explain anything old and weird. Coming in at number 5, we have the lost city of Atlantis. Was this a real place? Was it the most technologically advanced place in the world? Does Aquaman live there and rule with an iron claw? There are some people who swear that Atlantis is a real place that succumbed to some sort of natural disaster and might hold the greatest treasure on the planet. There are other people who think that it's all just made up, and then there's a third group of people who just want to hang out with mermaids. Coming in number 4, we have How Did They Ruin Game of Thrones? Just a warning, there is definitely going to be some spoilers in this point, so if you don't want to see it, skip to number 3. Okay, here's a fun one, but how on earth did the most popular show on TV, a show that had people clamoring all over it, and was the cornerstone of our culture, just fizzle out into nothing like it almost never existed? Now there are some ideas as to how this could have happened. There are rumors that the directors rushed the final season, that HBO told them that they could take as much time as they wanted, but they got an offer from Disney to work on Star Wars, so they sped through the final season so they can move on to something bigger. Later, the final season of Game of Thrones was so disastrous that they lost the Disney deal. There were just so many unanswered questions. Why did Arya never use her superpowers? How did a dragon get killed so easily? Why did Euron Greyjoy always pop up in the right place at the right time? Why does Jon Snow never fight one-on-one with the Night King? What was Bran doing in the whole final showdown fight? Right now, we have no explanation for any of this. Coming in at number 3, we have the Copper Scroll treasure. A lost treasure is always a great way to get people interested in a mystery. You're telling me there's an untold amount of money somewhere, and it could be all mine with a little bit of luck and a lot of digging? Well, kind of. The treasure of the Copper Scroll was first revealed back in the year 1952. It was part of a great archaeological find in a series of caves next to the Dead Sea. The Copper Scroll is literally a massive piece of copper that has writing engraved into it. Man, to think there was a time when copper was less valuable than paper, so you'd write down all your information in a giant piece of metal. The Copper Scroll talks about a treasure of gold and silver so large that most people think it's a lie. The size of the treasure would maybe be the largest gold and silver reserve in the world. Now, there is some backing to this. At the time that this scroll was written, there was a Roman force that was controlling the area. The people didn't like this, and they were waging war against the Romans. Now, because of this, there could have been several wealthy people who didn't want their goods to fall into the wrong hands and decided that they would pool their resources to keep their moolah in the same place and safe. But the question still stands. If the treasure is real, Where is it? Coming in at number 2, we have the ghost boats of Japan. Now this sounds like some sort of urban legend, but I will tell you that this is a very real thing, and it's one of the creepiest stories I've heard in recent years. The ghost boats of Japan have been washing up on the shores of northeastern Japan, and no one knows who sent them. They have all been wooden ships with no one on them. Well, no one alive has been on them. Every boat that makes contact with the shore has bodies in it. Sometimes it's just body parts, like a series of skulls were found on one boat. Other times it's a few bodies laid on top of each other, and the numbers vary every year. One year, 80 bodies were found in mysterious wooden boats that washed up on Japanese shores. Now, even though the exact breakdown on why this is happening is still a mystery, there have been some clues that have popped up along the way. One of the biggest is that there was some Korean writing on board of one of the ships and a torn piece of the North Korean flag. So it would be a good guess that North Korea is doing this. Why they would be sending ghost boats with dead bodies in them out into the water? Well, we still can't answer that. And coming at the number 1 spot, we have, is Jesus real? For the amount of people who pray to this dude and call him the Son of God, there is zero evidence that he actually walked the earth. Obviously, there's a lot of people who think that he did, but there's also a lot of people who think the Browns are going to win the Super Bowl every year. There are several things about Jesus being real that have been disproven. There were people trying to say that they discovered the house that Jesus grew up in, but carbon dating disproved that, as the time frames didn't add up. The house was constructed way after Jesus' time. There are a lot of people that think the teachings of Jesus aren't from a real person, but were put down on paper as a way to guide people to be kind to one another. Similar to the way that tales from pretty much every other culture in the world were not real, but are highlighted as a lesson. There's also a very interesting documentary about a man who was researching all of the scriptures about Jesus, and he thinks that the symbol for Jesus in the Bible was actually a symbol for mushrooms, like magic mushrooms, saying that taking mushrooms was the key to enlightenment and a religious experience. That I can get behind.
Coming in at number 10, we have what was before the Big Bang. The common consensus is that there was a massive event at the beginning of time that brought all of the universe into existence, and a bunch of stuff happened and then humans showed up. I hope you realize that I'm fast tracking this whole story a little bit. But some of the brightest minds on the planet have been able to use their collective intelligence to pull back the data to the point where the universe erupted from a condensed little sliver of explosion and fired out billions of galaxies across the ever-expanding universe, but everything that we understand about physics doesn't give us any information about what was before. Many scientists have uttered the words, "It doesn't make sense anymore." Man, that must be frustrating to just not be able to crack the code. My speculation is, and I come at this with zero knowledge of how the universe works, but that before the universe started, there was Samuel Jackson. Because that guy's everywhere. He's done like 200 movies. Coming in at number 9, we have dark matter. If you get into the world of science fiction, then you would have for sure heard of some character using dark matter for something, and it's usually very dangerous for whatever reason. And why is that? Well, here's the thing, scientists still don't know what dark matter is. They have never been able to bottle the stuff and look at it closely, but the universe shows a lot of signs that it does exist. The speculation as to what dark matter is basically a web of particles so plentiful that it holds the universe together. To give you perspective, what we can see in the universe, the stars, the planets, the moons, all of that only takes up about 5% of the endless void. Now, dark matter is thought to take up 25% of the space. There's speculation that dark matter has a gravitational pull, and that's why people think it props up the universe. Other people think that dark matter is an undiscovered property of gravity. Really, we have no idea what's going on, so when you read a science fiction book and they talk about dark matter, remember that the writer has no idea either. At number 8, we have why do we sleep? Well, because Stone Cold said so. That's a super old reference that probably no one will know, but this has been a question that has baffled scientists for an extremely long time. We know the benefits of sleep. When you sleep, your body repairs itself. Sleep is good for your cognitive function. Sleep helps your brain get in information. I could go on for 20 videos about all the scientific evidence about how important sleep is for your health. In fact, getting better sleep is the easiest and cheapest way to get healthier, but the question still stands. Why? There are other organisms on on the planet that never need to sleep, like bullfrogs, who won't fall asleep but they go into a rest state. There's a lot of speculation. Some people think that because our bodies are so much more complex, but they still come from the same genetic soup as a lot of the other things on this planet, our cells can't run something this powerful without taking a break. Other people think that this was some sort of defense mechanism created to wait out predators, but in the end we still don't have the answers. Coming in at number 7, we have the multiverse theory. Now, I want to start off by saying that this theory is still very unproven. It is all speculation. There are some microwave signals that come from the universe, and some scientists think this is evidence of other universes, but it's not like gravity, where we know it's real, we just don't know why. The multiverse theory is that, very much like the infinite expanding universe, there's also an infinite number of other universes that have all different variations of reality, which is pretty much the backbone of the show Rick and Morty. This could mean that there is a universe where you are the hot chick, so feel good about yourself. Now, even if this theory was true, it wouldn't be easy to go visit these places. Beyond the fact that we would have to build something to open a gate to these worlds, the laws of physics that bind these other universes together could be so different from our own that going to them would literally tear your atoms apart. At number 6, we have, why does time flow forward? Well, what is perceived as forward, you feel me? I mean, when I first was reading about this, I thought, well, because it does. It can only move one way. But why is the ultimate question. I think that's why I never became a scientist, because I never think to ask these questions. Newton wrote, all motion may be accelerated or slowed, but the flowing of absolute time is not liable to any change. And it's even in question, how could you measure the flow of time? I mean, time could stop moving right now, and then start moving the very next second, and we would never be able to tell the difference because our lives continue no matter what. So maybe this is a question that doesn't need to be asked, but I'm glad that we're asking it, because one day I would like to go back in time so I can go to Woodstock. Coming in at number 5, we have, how does gravity work? I mean, if you ask a flat earther, they'll tell you that gravity is fake and we're all held down by wind or some nonsense, but thankfully over here at Most Amazing Top 10, we don't use flat earth science. Now, we do know the effects of gravity. It basically pulls things in, and the more mass something has, the stronger its gravitational pull. Like the moon is smaller than the earth, so if you go up there and jump around, you will feel like you should be playing for the NBA. Gravity even has a massive effect on how the planet acts. The moon's gravitational pull will pull in and out the tides, but why? Why does this happen? Coming in at number 4, we have, why do magnets exist? Now, we do know a lot about magnets. I mean, you can give them to a child and they can easily figure out how the opposite forces of a magnet will connect to one another, and the same sides reject each other, like the majority of people I message on dating apps. We know that there are magnetic poles on each side of the planet, and we know that the electromagnetic force is one of the largest forces in the universe. But we are still left scratching our heads when it comes to the terms as to why they are here. Magnetism is one of the great underlying forces of the universe, and unlocking this one could answer a ton of questions about existence itself. Coming in at number 3, we have the placebo effect. The mind is a very powerful thing, and if you ever needed evidence, just look at the countless studies on the placebo effect. One of the craziest studies was one done on arthroscopic knee surgery. This is a common practice in older people with knee problems. A very simple surgery will be performed where 2 incisions are made on each side of the knee, and a doctor goes in and cleans out fluid and cleans up cartilage in the knee. Now, the purpose of this study was to find out what was more effective, the cleaning of the cartilage or the cleaning of the fluid. In order for the study to be successful, there was a control group that was given a mock surgery without their knowledge. Slits were made on the side of the knee, and even a fake surgery was shown on a screen for the patient to watch, but no actual surgery was performed. And the control group recovered just as well, and in some cases better, than the people who had the surgery. So in other words, the mind repaired the body somehow. Now, how this happens, we don't know, but it goes to show how much your thoughts can have influence over your body. Coming in at number 2, we have dark energy. Now, it sounds like we're going to go into a Marvel movie or something. What on earth is dark energy? Well, have you been paying attention to the list so far? We don't know what it is. And when I say we, I mean people much smarter than me. but we speculate that dark energy is what makes up the other 70% of the universe. Now, since the universe is constantly expanding like my gut after I refuse to listen to my own body's signals to stop eating, there needs to be some explanation as to why this is happening. The speculation is that dark energy is the cause of this never-ending growth spurt. Dark energy could be created by quantum particles smashing into each other all over the known universe. This is happening so many times that it would take a good portion of this video just to count all the zeros. But these collisions create energy, which in turn is pushing the universe apart. The question is, how far can the known universe get pushed? Could it get pushed to the point where reality is ripped apart? I don't know, I'm not smart enough to answer this. And coming in for the number 1 spot is quantum entanglement. Now, it sounds like I'm just making this stuff up, but I promise you I am not. This is very real. Quantum entanglement is when two particles that are nowhere near each other will start to mirror each other. Now, why is this strange? Well, because it was long thought that only something within a particle's environment could affect it. On top of this, the only way that particles could be doing this is if they were communicating in some way to one another, like they were hooked up on WhatsApp or something. But here's the thing, these particles are so far apart and moving together so perfectly that the speed in which they would have to be sending information breaks the laws of physics. The information would have to move faster than the speed of light, which was thought to be impossible. Now, how is this happening? Once again, we have no idea, but it begs the question, will we one day be able to move faster than the speed of light? I hope so, because that would be cool.